Hey, what's going on, guys? Ron here from the high ground, and today, if I can center this properly, there we go. I wanted to talk about a deck that I've been playing with. I've played different versions of it, but this is the version I have in real life, and it's Phasma. It's the Guardian Phasma deck, Phasma Guardian, Phasma and Friends, whatever you want to call it. You know, the 4 dice Guardian Phasma strategy. It goes by many names. We all know it. Some of us love it, some of us hate it. I love it. And I wanted to showcase this because I feel with the new erratas, I feel like this deck is top tier. If like, I'm not saying it's the best, but I believe it's a top tier, alternative to some of the other decks out there. So we're just gonna go over everything. So you have Captain Phasma, the old Phasma. The Phasma that everybody, gave up on, deserted, betrayed, left on the side of the road, pretty sure for a while since, Empire at War and, really since Spear Rebellion, even more so when the new Phasma came out. This one, she's been homeless with a sign saying, "Will be part of your deck for food," that type of thing. So, like the new Phasma and her have the same dice sides, except she has a discard instead of a special. She has 1 more health, and she costs a couple more points. 12, 15, and, she has her ability to make your non-uniques, like these guys, Guardian, which is the point of the deck. And, the 1 and 2 sides are what you're going to go for. The focus, very good. The discard now, I find myself using it quite a bit, especially if they have like 3 or less cards. Like, you know what? I'm not gonna bother reroll. I'm just gonna make you discard a card, and a lot of time, and it works out pretty well. The resources is whatever, and the blank you don't want. If you roll the blanks, like for some reason, some games I'll roll double blanks with her character dice. I'm just like, please, I don't want to have to leave you on the side of the road like everybody else. Like, just don't, please. Please work with me. But she did, because I played this at my locals this past Wednesday, and I got 2nd place. Played a mirror match in the end. And yeah, it's obviously very good. The Guavian is the other character we're going to be using. 9 health for 8. That's 8, right? Yep, that's 8. 50% damage sides, 1 being modified, 2 resource modifiers and a blank. The damage sides are good. The modified resource sides are okay if you roll the resource on some other dice. And it's also a bait and switch target, which is another good card we'll get into. Now the action to remove the die to remove a shield from a character, I forget about it quite a bit. It's not something I look for, but I did use this actually once when I, sat down and decided to read my own card. And it actually won me a game by giving me lethal damage on my opponent. And the first order stormtrooper is, a stormtrooper. 7 for 7, 3 damage sides, 1 costs money. Money side, 2 blanks. Now, in my games, I find either I roll damage or blanks the entire game. Sometimes I'll roll all blanks the whole game. Sometimes I'll get good damage, or sometimes I'll roll the 2 for $1 and not be able to pay for it because I'm poor. So, and yeah, so her Phasma giving these guys Guardian is very good, as you will see in some of the other cards that we have here. Let's move on over here. So we have our upgrades. I've got 10, 2, 4, 6, 8. I'm sorry, that is actually 12. I'm sorry, I can't count, nor can I read. So, in no order, I'm just going to go over the upgrades. We've got 2 holdout blasters, nothing really to say here. The ambush redeploy, still one of the best guns in the game. I only play 1 Cad Bane pistol, and the reason being is because late game I don't want another one. Because on Phasma, once you get, holdout blaster, the LL30, F11D, or whatever other guns on her, drawing multiples is kind of irrelevant. Like, yeah, you can put it on another one of your characters, but I like having just one. The DH-17s are very good opening You know, 1 cost to have, and you know it's got 2 blanks. So a lot of times I do roll blanks because I'm trash. But it's got 50% damage sides, and the shield side I end up taking for my guardians a lot because you know shields on guardians is very important. And wait, there we go. Iced coffee is always good. 1 Captain Phasma blaster. I was running 2, but a lot of times I would play 1 and the other one just discard fodder. So I figured take it out for something more useful. You know, cost 3. It's got 4 damage sides. 1 you have to pay for, 1 that's a modified, a resource, and a blank. And you know, while you put on Phasma, it has redeploy. So you'll obviously play on Phasma because she's essentially the target. They always go after her, and if they roll well, she sometimes dies turn 3 or 4. I mean 2 or 3, which happen and kind of makes you cry. So yeah, overall good. And then we've got Imperial Discipline. I play 2 of. Another good, you know, opening to have if you don't have DH-17. You know, its dice sides are not the best. You don't want to get the melee side because there's no melee. And you know, the gun side's okay. It being for red character only means you're not going to put on Guavian, obviously. You're going to put on the Stormtrooper or Phasma. The shield and resource sides are honestly whatever. I would take shields for guardians, and the resource sides are good for, you know, getting money or just bait and switching, but you wouldn't bait and switch this. But the action is where this card comes in very good. You remove the die to turn a character dice or an upgrade dice to a resource or a range side. You'll be going for range, obviously. And that's where this card really comes in, because I put this on Phasma turn 1 if I don't have a gun for her to use. And it's like, oh, I'll just turn to a gun sight and shoot you with it. Or a lot of times I put in the Stormtrooper. That way, if I keep rolling that stupid, you know, 2 for $1, I can be like, alright, remove this dice and just turn it to a black side. I don't have to pay for anything. So, yeah, overall good card, underrated card. I was playing 1 of them, like, this card is very good too. Another card that's good too is Hunker Down. You know, with shields, you know, being more prevalent and the meta kind of slowing down with the erratas and the new RRG. I've always played Hunker Down in this deck because having this equipped to a Guardian character is always good. Giving them shields, especially if you give your Stormtrooper the 2 shields from the start of game procedures by choosing their battlefield. If I had this opening hand, I'm like, alright, drop this on Stormtrooper. Next action, exhaust it to give him a shield. And now I have a Guardian with 10 health, 3 shields that will absorb most damage, and it's good for, best defense. And the last gun we're going to be using for this is F11D. I was actually surprised to see a lot of deck lists not run this, but I feel that this is a must-have. It's another good 2-drop with redeploy. It's got 4 damage sides with a special, and a resource, and the blank, which we don't want to top up the blanks. The 2 for $1 can be annoying if you can't pay for it, but as the rounds progress, if you play this deck, you'll find that you don't use your resources a whole lot, except for some of your mitigation. Because once you get a couple weapons on Phasma, and maybe 1 or 2 on a Guardian, you're set. You don't really need to play like more weapons. And the special early game is not too good because they'll just spread out their damage amongst their characters. But late game, when they're down to like 1 character, it becomes 2 damage, which is, very good. So overall, that's the weapon suite. To be perfectly honest, I only run 1 because every time I have 2, I trade 1 away to someone and I need it later. That's another reason. But I find 1 is perfectly fine. And then we have, I run 2 support cards, Salvage Stand and Backup Muscle. Salvage Stand works great because, there's a lot of resource sides going on. So if I get 1 or 2 of these in my opening hand, I tend to keep them, because your opponent losing 2 resources is very damaging, especially if you get it off like your first action, I'm sorry. And it pretty much acts like a disrupt sign on your dice, essentially. You roll a resource, and it makes them have to spend their resources, which a lot of times like, oh, they're playing salvage stand, I gotta spend my money now. But you know, late game is not so good. You want to get this early, but it's overall a great card. You know, if Heroes had this, then I think we'd be in trouble. And then I play Backup Muscle. You know, again, with the slowing of the meta, this card is actually, you know, to me is going to make a comeback. You know, 1 cost is great, and being able to do 3 damage over time. So, because a lot of people who play this, they just, every turn, they just do a damage. Sometimes I'll hold on to the damage, like I'll do 1 here, and 1 here, and I'll keep that last damage, because I find a lot of times my opponent will forget about it. And they're like, oh, I'm alive by 1. And I back up most of them. They're like, what, you had another damage? Yep, I sure did. And they're like, alright, I lose. So yeah, it's pretty good. And then on to the events, which is mostly mitigation. 2, he doesn't like you. So a lot of this is self-explanatory for the deck. You know, he doesn't like you is one of the best, you know, removal cards for villains. You know, if you have, you know, dice that are just not rolling too well for you, they are just trash, just, you know, get rid of it. And it's a 0 cost, so a lot of this is 0 cost or 1. It's all very cheap removal, so it's also always good to have. Rend. Now Rend is a cheeky card, because when I played in the tournament this past Wednesday at my locals, the only time this was relevant was when I played against Palpatine, because I would rend the Holocron and the Force Speed. I didn't play against anything that really had anything to rend. There was like 1 or 2 Sabine decks, so I'm like, alright, if they have running interference, I'll just get rid of it. But a lot of time this ended up being a discard, or if they were using like Salvage Stand, or if they were still using Imperial Inspection, whatever, I would just use on that. But overall, Rend really depends on your local meta, or your tabletop meta if you strictly play on here. So it's really more of a meta call. I like it, and you know, if anything, I would just take it out for more mitigation or more guns, maybe. The best defense, it is the best defense, because one of the better red removal cards, you know, for villains. You know, going back to the whole, to using Hunker Down, if I have Hunker Down on a Stormtrooper, and they have 2 shields from the start of the game, this becomes a free card. You pay 1 just to remove 2 dice, because you're not doing any damage to your Stormtrooper. Stormtrooper is usually the one that you best defense. You're not going to best defense Phasma unless you're desperate, or if it'll kill a Stormtrooper, which a lot of times, if you weigh it, it's best to kill your Stormtrooper than to have them almost kill or kill, you know, Phasma. Because when Phasma dies, the game kinda slows down a little bit. Doubt, just another great removal. You know, sometimes depending on what you're playing against, you know, doubting's not really good. Like, if you're playing against Palpatine, doubting's really not that good, unless they roll a blank, because they'll resolve it, and then bad things happen. You know, I find doubt, it's good, but you also have to think and be smart with it. You can't just doubt anything, because it's like, oh, they're showing big damage, doubt it, and they roll either a better side to it or the same side, and it's like, well, that didn't work out too well. So doubt's really a you have to take a chance on it, but still, it's good. 0 cost removal. Flank. Any deck that uses, you know, 3 characters, or 4, if you're using 4 characters, uses flank. You know, because a lot of times you won't roll out until your opponent rolls out, so you can guardian their damage sides, or you'll just roll out Phasma first and then just go all out. So flank is just overall very good. Bait and switch, you know, it's bait and switch. You know, being able to turn a resource to damage. You know, when you have modifiers, you know, it catches your opponent off guard, even if they do know you're playing it. Excuse me. Like, when you're in an intense game, you're not really thinking, oh, does he have bait and switch? You're more worried about, can I do the most damage? Can I mitigate if he rolls this? You're thinking of other things. So sometimes this will catch people off guard, even if they're expecting it. So yeah, overall, like, this is a must-have. And 2 electroshocks, you know, more basic removal. The only time this ends up being bad is if they're rolling stuff that's higher than 2, or if Guavian dies, because that's their only yellow character. But even then, it's still good. Just discard to reroll. So nothing really too flashy in terms of the removal. Everything's pretty, self-explanatory. So, and that's pretty much the deck that I've been using in real life into this. If I had to make changes, I really wouldn't, because I like how this deck is very consistent, even though I do only run one of this. If I did have another one, I would probably take out an Imperial Discipline for it, but even still I would run 2. The supports, I will always keep these, because these are very good to have. And the removal, like I said, I would remove Rend, depending on the local meta. Regional-wise, I think this will fare better, because in locals, they're not really big. But in a bigger tournament, I think Rend will be a lot better. And, yeah, overall, I don't really see, anything I would change. I was thinking about putting in Aftermath, but I'm like, not really. And then Imperial HQ is one I did think about playing. But, to be honest, it's kind of hard to find something that I would cut for it. Because, most of your dice do have, pay size, so it would be good to have it. So if anything, I would, take out, maybe an Imperial Discipline and maybe, the 2 Rens, if anything, would come out for Imperial HQ, but overall, I do like how this deck has been functioning. There is another build of this deck I've been using. I made a video about this a little while ago, where I was using Night Sister in the place of the Guavian. And the Night Sister, that's another build of deck I want to make in real life, if I get Force Lightnings from someone. Because that gives you Holocron and, access to blue. But overall, in major tournament settings, I would run this build, and I am very happy with it. Do I think it'll be the best deck of the meta? Probably not, because there's stuff like Qui-Gon Kanan, which is a lot more consistent if they roll focus. But overall, I do like this deck and how it performs. The Guardian is a really underrated keyword, and the best matchup I found for this deck is Palpatine, because you have so much mitigation, and if you Guardian Palpatine's dice, you don't do 2 damage, you just absorb that damage. So I would have like hunker down on these guys, and just keep hunkering down, because Palpatine's a little slow. They tend to play like 4-speed Holocron and then roll them. So I've got 2 actions to set everything up, and then just be able to go in. So that's the best matchup. The worst matchup, that's kind of hard to say, because I haven't played against everything with this deck. I played the Mirror. The Mirror essentially is just a Guardian Fest, and it depends on, not just card choices, but how you play. The Sabine deck might be one of the worst matchups, just because, Ezra steals your money, and Sabine gets in big damage. But then again, I've only played against that once. It wasn't in a tournament, it was on here in a random game I played the other day. But against everything else, it's very solid. So, I would definitely suggest this deck to someone. It's very cheap too, because if you look at the cards here, this is all the upgrades are cheap. The only thing that might be expensive is the Holdout Blaster. These are, common or uncommon. They're not worth anything, so you can easily get them, and all your removal is common and uncommon. So the only thing that is worth is Electroshock. So, yeah, and even Phasma is like $10. And then these guys, he comes in a starter, so he's like $1. And then, well, I bet him at $1. And then Guavian is just, not worth a whole lot either. So, but another card that I do see people playing, there's 2. There's the X8 Sniper, which is not in this build, because this is reflecting my real life build. I don't have X8 Snipers. I'm not gonna bother getting them, because to me they're overpriced. And 2, most, everything except for the Hunger Down and Imperial Discipline has redeploy, and while X8 is good, and has ambush, I feel that having redeploy on all these other guns, except for these three, is a lot better than, because when I pay 2 for that and the character dies, I end up losing value in the end. Well, if I give them one of these redeploy guns, I never lose the value of it. And the Relby mortar gun, the what's his name, the boss gun, is another gun I was considering, but it's cost 3, and I like to keep this deck's resource curve at a minimum. So yeah, that's my card choices. If I had them, I would play them, but overall, I just like my build of it. I like the cards that I use, and my card choices and how I play. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna be using this in some upcoming tabletop videos, and yeah, I hope you guys like it. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys later.